Right. Well, thank you both for coming onto the podcast. This episode, we're going to be talking about IPs, how to make them successful in themed attraction, which seems to be an art and a science at the same time. Um, but first of all, Nayo, I've got a question for you, which is going back through Aardman's website and news over the past 6 months, you've announced partnerships with Lego, Pokemon, and obviously the stuff that we've done together on the World of Aardman experience concept. You've won 2 Guinness World Records, and you've just announced an augmented reality app for the attractions industry. So my question is, how do you fit all that into a week's work?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very busy job, yeah, and a very busy studio at the moment, brilliantly, which is great. Um, yeah, I mean, there's always something new coming up, always something of great interest, and always a audience appetite. Fortunately for our brands, our characters, and our news stories, and yeah, lots of excitement. I mean, we're in a great period after the last Wallace and Gromit film, Vengeance Most Foul, which amongst its awards, it's always also created a huge amount of kind of guest and audience interest in our brands. And so in attractions, live experiences, we're really seeing the kind of the opportunities kind of grow and grow on the back of that success globally, which is great. And speaks to the kind of value of working with partners like Catapult, to create those kind of concepts that are market ready when we're approached with conversations, or when we're approaching kind of target uh, existing and future partners.
Excellent. And you have a Shaun the Sheep film coming soon as well. 6, is
We
that?
do, yes, yeah. In terms of what's coming out of the studio, we've just launched Series 7 of Shaun the Sheep in the UK. BBC have been brilliant partners throughout the kind of almost 20 years history of the series. And they did this great launch around the May half term, the last May half term. We did a really big kind of takeover with huge positive responses. So that kind of sets us up nicely for the next movie. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really exciting time in the brand's history. We've also got the Lunar New Year of the Sheep coming up in 2027. So again, it's it kind of goes on, and that's also the 20th anniversary of the series. So yeah, really
Wow, that's
exciting.
perfect. That's perfect. I must admit, Shaun the Sheep is one of probably 3 or 4 cartoons that my children watch regularly on a daily basis. I've even started picking up the accent of Vic Reeves, who obviously sings the intro. But yeah, no, it's so exciting that you've got more Shaun the Sheep stuff
Yeah,
coming out,
and I
which
think
is
that I mean
fantastic.
sorry, you mentioned kind of voice talent, but I think that the value of Shaun the Sheep and what makes it so licensable internationally and so successful internationally is the kind of non-dialogue element of the show,
Mm,
and the fact that it's non-dialogue, but it's centered on the family, slapstick humor. It is a kind of a winning combination, I think, for all ages.
absolutely. Another one of the cartoons my kids always watch, even though there's not been new content recently, is the animated version of Mr. Bean.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
absolutely love it. It was kind of
Yeah,
in
same
its
same in our
haunch, sort of like,
household.
yeah, 2000s. I don't know when the last episode was made, but yeah, that ability to create universal characters out of something that is completely and utterly British in
yeah.
both senses of the stories is a wonderful thing.
I mean, I think that kind of, looking at a brand like that where it hasn't had new content is really interesting because, we've always we make constant kind of content, particularly for brands like Shaun the Sheep, but there are kind of periods where there isn't a kind of an immediate release. Wallace and Gromit's a good example, for example, where it was kind of there was a long gap between content ahead of Vengeance releasing. And that's why I think attractions are so vital to IPs as other gateway opportunities for brands, and also kind of sustaining interest and even growing kind of brand awareness and engagement in those periods between content releases. So for IP owners, it's this sector is a really vital part of our ongoing brand and studio success.
Excellent. And I guess as part of that sort of promotion, particularly within the attractions industry, you was at IAPA Asia. Well, we were at IAPA Asia between the two of us. Phil, how did you find that market? I think it's been maybe 2, 3 times that you've been, and I know you
Yeah, but
took on a few attractions as well whilst you were there.
Yeah, but we've attended IAPA Asia a few times now, and actually back in Shanghai, I think it was 2019. I think pre-pandemic. So it was interesting to see how much it had changed, and I think the show had grown quite a lot as well. Incredibly well attended, but it was good. There's kind of a good kind of sense of excitement out there at the moment. I think in terms of projects we've been working on, we worked on a few kind of sort of theme park master plans out there. So they're kind of early doors, bigger projects. But when you're out there looking at the developments of existing parks, when we were there, there was a great IAPA event at Shanghai Disney, which was fantastic. I really wanted to go back. I think last time I was there in 2019, there was like hoardings up advertising the Zootopia development, which is now open, which was fantastic. Seeing the existing parks and the redevelopments that are happening there was great. And we also got to see our friends at Lego. We had a bit of a tour of Legoland Shanghai, which um, having been to I think probably most of the Legoland parks around the world, it's a bit of a game changer, I think, in terms of both its size, but it's kind of built from the ground up. It's a different kind of layout, different setup to normal. Um, there's some kind of world firsts there in terms of Lego products into market and into kind of themed entertainment. Lots of hands on brick building, which is really good and something that I think people expect to see and maybe don't get as much as they want to. So seeing those investments, those new kind of parks have been great. But also, I think the conversations that we had for investors, regional kind of development investment, looking to invest into attractions and experiences was super exciting. And I think it's definitely a kind of a region of interest for us.
And Ngaio, I think you mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking offline around the sentiment and how much things have changed in that period since pre-COVID. What did you make of the show this year?
I thought, I mean, from an IP owner's point of view, I think it was very much kind of quality over quantity for us. There was, definitely a change in the kind of profile of attendees at the show. I think part of that has maybe also been driven by the kind of the profile of the Chinese domestic shows as well. So, again, that's kind of interesting to watch that market. And I think that is symbolic of what Phil was saying, that, the operator expectations and standards as well, most significantly guest expectations and standards for theme park attraction has just accelerated so significantly from Disney opening in 2016 and then Universal Beijing coming in 2021. So from an IP owner's point of view, that was, really kind of reassuring. It's what we thought the direction of travel would be, but it was really evidenced. And, I was on a couple of the EDU tours as well, and both Legoland and the back of house at Disney, really kind of spoke to kind of the quality of the experiences and permanent attractions that are being developed in the territory. I think another trend that was really interesting was what we kept hearing referred to as slow tourism. And I think that it spoke to how the Chinese audience has changed in terms of their engagement with kind of leisure and tourism experiences. I think partly because of the big IP players that are now in the market. I think COVID had an impact. And there's also kind of government policy as well that's really encouraging a different style of leisure engagement, which is over kind of, time and quality, well-being. There was lots of kind of talk around that. So kind of encouraging people to get out and engage with nature, which was great for, an IP owner like us with a brand like Shaun the Sheep, which is kind of centered on nature. So, seeing real opportunities where IP adds value to those ambitions of kind of operators. But also speaking to kind of the government policy, that we had lots of conversations with kind of rural development organisations, cultural rural development organisations, not easy to say, which are really kind of looking at trying to kind of create hubs and creative kind of cultures and communities within rural environments to stop that kind of urban flight that they've seen of kind of young people moving into the great big urban centres, whereas now they're really trying to kind of focus on kind of creating experiences, culture, reasons for kind of young families to stay in more rural areas. And then that also aligned with kind of the celebration of Chinese culture, and again seeing some really impactful regional Chinese cultural projects. And again, that's interesting for our brand, in terms of kind of finding a way to engage with those without obviously wanting to kind of impose our kind of stories on them. It's finding original stories that really integrate with Chinese traditions and regional cultures. And yeah, seeing that, it just felt like there's a real breadth of opportunity across the whole country, and even in kind of, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, the kind of level of investment is kind of, really significant and showing the right direction of travel, I think, that we would look for as IP owners.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the changeover in people looking at IPs for that placemaking piece, or almost to create a destination, maybe where it doesn't necessarily exist, or like you said, it could be a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, which is looking at not necessarily increasing tourism, but just retaining the domestic market. And for big cities like that, I don't think it's just Asia. I think I've certainly seen it in Europe and the Middle East as well. But
Yeah.
it's becoming more of a factor that people want iconic leisure near where they live.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as you said, Ngaio, it's great that you've got such an amazing portfolio of IPs that you can call upon, whether it's a farm attraction or a theme park.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's that added value that IP can use in a territory like China to really kind of, bring in the international and kind of domestic audience engagement. I think, when we were first looking at the Chinese market, it was very kind of centered on, appealing to the domestic tourism leisure industry, whereas now, I think because of the impact of Disney and Shanghai and those international IP, there is, for the right partnerships, I don't think this applies to every international IP, but for certain, IP that do share values with, the kind of, whether it's government policy or kind of, regional kind of policy that operators are supportive of, there's some real opportunity.
Excellent. And I guess that extends to, for you guys, education around field to fork, field to fork. Is that the
Farm
right thing in terms? Farm to fork. Thank you, from Shaun the Sheep. But obviously, I guess your animation background as well means that sort of a more of a high tech educational background is something that I guess people want to buy into as well with your IP.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that's global rather than kind of specific to kind of the Chinese market in particular. I mean, I think
Mm.
that resonates really well kind of across Asia more widely, and the Middle East similarly. I think that's what you know this conversation with kind of Catapult and the concept that we've developed, that was very much about kind of offering, a concept that has that real flexibility to kind of dial up or down, or kind of a flex to a variety of different conversations that you may have. And kind of the lovely kind of modular nature of what we've done, which was highlighted in the kind of latest update that we released in IAPA Asia, was it really kind of, there's something for everyone, whether you really want to kind of drive an experience forward with our character brands, it has the ability to scale up with that, whether you then want to kind of plug in those studio edutainment pieces. In China, in Asia, it's always really interesting to have those elements in a concept because it speaks to the breadth of demographic of our fans in those regions. Because kind of, I think traditionally it's led by Japan, but we're really seeing, the impact across kind of South Korea and China. The kind of character fan, young adult, and kind of young professional engagement with our brands. And again, I think that speaks to those heritage brands where there is a kind of nostalgia, but there's also a real design-led trend that we can kind of speak to over the legacy of our kind of brand development that really kind of taps into that trend and gives opportunities in the experiential world that engage with adults as much as with families.
Fantastic. And yeah, we'll come on to the world of Aardman shortly. I guess from your perspective, from Aardman's perspective, thinking about the attractions that you have created already and are looking to create in the future, what are the most important facets for you that every Aardman experience needs to have?
Everyone talks about stories, but for us, it is about to make sure that, after we've done the due diligence of, the location, the operator, and just making sure that we create a backstory that kind of establishes a really authentic narrative for why our characters are at that location or in that territory. I think our Swedish attraction, it's at Skåne Djurpark in southern Sweden, is a perfect example of, we created this, brilliant backstory that explained why Shaun the Sheep was at a Nordic animal park. We weren't kind of taking a cookie cut approach and telling them to recreate Mossy Bottom Farm. It was really about, they've come to kind of embrace everything that the guests also experience when they come to this amazing Nordic animal park. And creating that backstory that was then kind of taken forward and centered in the guest experience on site has meant it's given us a foundation to continue to grow the partnership. So continue to develop additional experiences on site, including my favourite themed accommodation, which is a kind of a shepherd's hut programme, which was the narrative that if the flock were staying at Skåne Djurpark, what would they stay in and what would it look like? And so we have recreated these amazing kind of shepherd's huts with the operator that is a truly globally unique, overnight experience for guests and families, and is drawing kind of audiences from kind of across Scandinavia and Europe.
That level of authenticity, though, Phil, is something that we certainly bring into attractions. We can't brand slap for a better want of a phrase when it comes to IPs. It's got to be something authentic, but it's got to be something in keeping with the audience and the location, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, and the audience expectation, in terms of if they're fans, they'll expect something unique, and they'll expect an authentic narrative and something that is grounded in terms of the world in which it exists. So the fact that Aardman and your team are willing to invest time to develop those kind of backstories and things is great, and great from our perspective, because it means we can make something unique that ultimately is a the special experience that people will want to go to and creates a destination, as opposed to, like you said, the kind of the cookie cutting approach, which kind of works to a degree, but people want something unique, and that's where you get a successful experience.
And I think our content is renowned for its second look kind of value. Every time you watch one of our films for the second, third, fourth time, you'll see something different in the detail in the background. That there's layers and layers of kind of humour in there, and I think that's what's so vital to us in terms of our experience concepts and attractions as well. Is that for the operators, it creates repeatability, which is brilliant. And for the guests, it means that every time you come back, there's another layer of experience that, you should be able to take away from it. World of Aardman speaks to that brilliantly, just those kind of nuanced kind of touches, but always kind of fun and humour and surprises.
And we love that, the task of digging deep looks great. It works. It's an amazing experience. But yeah, that like you say, that second and third look. Robbie, did we do a podcast about Easter eggs? And there are so many out there. Like you say, the amount of times I've watched a Wallace and Gromit film, and I'm still seeing little nuggets that I'm like, did I see that before? A testament to the creators and the craft behind it, the people who are so immersed into it that they want every single touch point to be there for a reason. Everything is thought through, which is similar to what exactly how we would transform that into a spatial design for people to experience.
Fantastic. So coming on to a couple of the experiences that we've designed together. So at Ayaparage, as you mentioned, Ngaio, there was two experiences. There was the Wallace and Gromit dining experience, which if people are watching the podcast, they can see a picture of now. And there's also the Wallace and Gromit shop and go store as well. And Phil, it's allowed us to kind of flex some of our 3D environment muscles, hasn't it? And not only enjoy stepping back into the world of Aardman for a short period of time, but I guess making these concepts even more realistic so operators know what they're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the team have done a great job in terms of that kind of end visual that we've the end few visuals that we've got to, but all starts with the big idea in terms of understanding what that wish fulfillment is for the guests, making sure that we're representing the brands, and for both the F&B but also for the retail, it's making sure that its core purpose is fulfilled. So for the retail, product was key, but we also wanted to tell a story and make it experiential and make people want to visit and allow the ability for new products in there. But also we wanted it to cover the scale of the journey and the world of kind of Wallace and Gromit over the years. So not just kind of hook it on the new film, but have the second and third look, having little moments, little Easter eggs, little reference points that cover their kind of world and what they represent.
And I was just going to say, I think what you've done so well is also kind of capture the tactileness of our kind of brands and our characters. I think, it is stop motion. We are made out of clay. The thumbprint is part of our corporate identity as a studio, And so when we look at those experiential retail, all food and beverage, food and dining, we really kind of want people to physically kind of get involved in that experience, and I think that's what you've captured so brilliantly. And the themes of, Wallace and Gromit are inventors, not always, the most successful kind of, inventions, but, you want guests to have things to push and pull and press and touch and, get reactions from. And I think, that's what makes this such a great concept from our point of view as brand owners.
Yeah, and I must admit, when I first saw the dining experience, I thought that's the kind of place I'd probably spend a lot of money. I think the huge table of cheese and crackers would definitely get demolished. The afternoon tea, which was displayed on a rocket from the first episode of Wallace and Gromit. There's so many. I mean, Phil, there's so many little Easter eggs in here. That to be able to see this in real life would be incredible.
The team had an absolute field day in terms of, bringing those to life. And again, that's tapping into all the different kind of episodes, films, and things, and pulling them into one place. It didn't feel too cluttered. Felt as if it was a space, space that you could enjoy. But I was chatting actually with Jack, our 3D designer, earlier, and it was interesting going from the idea of what it should be to kind of a sketched concept. But he said the importance of actually taking it into a 3D spatial design was incredibly important, because suddenly you understanding the scale of things, characters, operational space to make sure it functions well, and he said that was where it got really interesting, because he could then start looking at some of the great kind of visual design language and aesthetic of Wallace and Gromit, but also some of the contraptions. How big are they, in our world, and how can we kind of make sure that it feels hands-on, it feels tactile, show moments happening, all sorts of fun things. And I'm sure if anyone's watching this can get the visual and zoom in, you'll see there's so many little moments in there, which is so much fun.
And I think our purpose as a studio is to make people smile, and that's what you always want when you see a concept. Is you look at it and it makes you smile, because the humour of the kind of characters and the brand are coming out instantly. And I think you've achieved that really successfully. What I love about this concept, and the fact that it's titled World of Aardman, is that it very much is kind of set up to kind of plug in very nicely with other experiential elements as well. We talked about, the studio kind of getting hands-on and giving kind of guests an opportunity to kind of come in and make their own animations. That's something that is part of our kind of, legacy, really, to encourage the next generation of animators. And we created the Aardman Animator app, which is, free to download on iOS and Android. And again, as a really accessible way of kind of audiences being able to kind of, tap in, but creating that themed environment that makes it even more special and really represents kind of what it's like to pull back the black curtain of one of our animating units in the studio. Again, is another kind of enhancement of, these lovely concepts that Catapult have created. And again, kind of being able to bring in other characters. And I think that's what's always been a real plus for us about having the Aardman Studio kind of identity and concepts, is that very naturally that creates the umbrella where Shaun the Sheep can live alongside Wallace and Gromit, and Timmy Time can kind of come in as well as our classic brands. And E26 is a really kind of important moment for us as a studio. It's our 50th anniversary, so again, these kind of concepts really speak to those conversations that we're having around that globally about making the most of that really historic moment for us as a studio.
Wow, 50 years, and it's our 25th next
Amazing.
year. So
It is, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
a double anniversary
launched it.
I was going to say, and no, you're absolutely right. The concept was created to be scalable and be able to plug into an existing attraction, or maybe just one element of it standalone. But what we loved when taking on the task of thinking, okay, what would an Aardman experience be, is the thought of this kind of celebration of the world of. So that's, the expectation will be to be able to step into the world and you know, be in the space of these characters and these narratives and things. But also, it's about the craft, and that's where, I think as a creative company, we that have grown up with Aardman, the appreciation of the craft is amazing, and the opportunity to be able to get guests to enjoy the world, the in-world of Aardman, but also about tapping into really kind of fueling creative expression, and that is kind of something which is close to our hearts as creatives, and something that we love, kind of the challenge of kind of creating these environments where we can allow both future designers, future animators of tomorrow, but allowing people to kind of creatively express themselves with families, with friends, that sort of thing, which is super exciting for us.
And what I loved about the original concept as well was that kind of element of inclusivity, and it's really important for us to be able to kind of create experiences that all of our fans can engage with. So I think, we had that lovely kind of welcome area where anyone can, if this was located in a shopping mall, for example, anyone could kind of, walk in and engage in that kind of welcome area where there is kind of hands-on activities, and, there's a gateway into the dining, or there's, kind of an opportunity to kind of spend time in the experiential shop. But then there are also kind of ticketed experiences as well that offer unique opportunities for guests to kind of get involved in the creativity and kind of production elements of our studio. Or there are special event areas as well that can kind of be, kind of really flexible spaces as well. But it is making sure that all of our kind of fans feel able to kind of engage, and I love that you captured that in the concept.
Coming back to the main crux of the podcast, there are a lot of IPs that have tried to take a digital prominent world and try and build it out. So it'd be really interesting to start with is we at Catapult, we did some research and we asked the attractions industry, this was in 2022, about brands and IPs. And 70% of industry peers said that IPs are going to be even more important over the next 5 years than it was the previous 5. So, and we're still in that now. And I think we're fair to say that IPs are still growing within the market. We're certainly not hit a saturation point. But 65% believe that attractions need to do more to uphold brand guardianship, which was a big take out there. So yes, IPs are used and popular and they do the job maybe from a commercial perspective. But keeping that story going, making sure that creative on point is somewhere where the industry felt was lacking. Now, from that perspective, what have you done to ensure success in differing regions that you've worked in?
I think we put a lot of work into that kind of the initial due diligence with the partners that we work with. I mean, from the practical, perspective, we share values with them and understand their values, and they understand ours. I think that's really critical. That then leads into that process of kind of creating that kind of backstory that gives you that foundation to continue to kind of build your partnership on. So that kind of first day, and that's it. We walk away as IP owners, or it would be unfair to also expect our operators to kind of continue without incentives. That's how I kind of see it, that we really need to kind of engage in an active relationship. So we're talking to them regularly, we're asking them what their kind of ambitions are, and we're aware of any changes that they have, and we're aware of challenges they have as well. And over the last kind of few years, there even putting COVID aside, there have been kind of some real challenges that our operators have faced. Natural disasters, for example, that are out of everyone's control. So building that trusted relationship, so that if there are ever, and there are rarely, but if there are ever those kind of moments where you just think, what we really need, we need you to kind of elevate. We feel as though to kind of continue to increase your visitor numbers and the benefit of our brand, you need to kind of offer them something new. You need to kind of dial up, here are themes, here are stories, here's sometimes kind of often with Shaun the Sheep, it is related to kind of new content or anniversaries that we have coming up, just really to kind of give them those hooks and essentially make it as easy as possible to get as much value as possible from the brand partnership. We really genuinely feel an active responsibility to our partnerships with operators, and that it is a two-way relationship. And I think by achieving those types of relationships, it has never been that difficult, or there has never been a significant need to kind of, really have to kind of, demand that kind of maintenance, engagement and guardianship. It's kind of just been a natural part of the process and the relationship.
And I guess that's changed the way you approach from a strategic perspective as well, I guess. Relationship first, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, kind of territory and location as well. It is, it's understanding what the kind of market trends are. Do they, again, kind of align with, our values and the direction our brands are taking? Can we see opportunity? For me, the most exciting opportunities are when we kind of find a territory where, perhaps we don't yet have a strong consumer product campaign, but actually the experiential trends, we can see there's opportunity. We can kind of get in and we're the gateway. And our content might not even, be kind of on their biggest providers, but we can be the gateway, and then the consumer product, program grows on the back of the success of our experience.
It's really interesting. Phil, we've had quite a few conversations around IPs looking at new markets, deciding whether it's a marketing spend or whether it's an attraction spend, and figuring out,
what's the best
who
route
owns
in?
this? Yeah, who owns this budget line? What's the best way in? Yeah, we've had a few conversations like that, haven't we?
Yeah, and like you say, it often comes down to market opportunity, trends. What's driving the shift? Does it align with studio content, with consumer product launches, all that sort of thing? Yeah. So what's driving that decision? But you're right to it's I think dedication to you and your team in terms of finding the right partners is key, because it's not just about licensing. It's actually a partnership, and it's there's a big build up to open attraction somewhere, but that's the start.
And
it's not the end. That's
exactly, and that's it. In a different way to other areas of our our licensing and just the business that the studio does. These can be 10-15 year relationships that that you're going into. So it really it is, you have to see it as a kind of a partnership. And and again, on that kind of content piece, we talked about kind of classic content formats, and the fact that it isn't always that kind of consistent pipeline to work with. But as a studio, we are finding new formats to deliver content that with all the values and kind of quality of Aardman Productions, but at shorter format. So a digital first program that we're working on as well, that is another way of kind of keeping audiences engaged, but also a really quick way to respond to kind of trends that, stop motion is brilliant, but it can be quite a slow beast, because humour is at the heart of everything we do. We want to have that flexibility to kind of jump on those new trends. So this is a really exciting kind of chapter in our kind of history as well, just finding those new, ingenious, inventive, kind of quick ways to kind of create content for different platforms, alongside that, the classic kind of pipeline of series, shorts and half hours films.
Final note, upholding that guardianship is so important. That's obviously something we take quite seriously from a design perspective. If you've got all this content, you don't want to chuck anything out onto designs or into the real world. So how do we go about it, and why is it important?
We are very lucky to be trusted by some global brands and some great characters, IPs, worlds, but a lot of that is because of the fact that we're trusted, because we are ultimately an extension, and we fully immerse ourselves. We build up partnerships with the right IPs, the right people, and that's the IPs themselves. But it's people like Ngaio who put trust in us and understand that we have the care and attention to uphold the brand, and ultimately be kind of an extension of their team, and that is working alongside them, understanding how to transform IPs and brands into an attraction space. But not just, like I say, it's not just about kind of getting to that finished point. It's about maintaining that. So again, working alongside IPs to look at how to make repeatability, how to create seasonality, new innovative ways of technology that might be coming out to be able to kind of fold in new reasons for people to come back. But yeah, in terms of being brand guardians, that's everything from early concepts through to developing a detailed design to make sure that the finishes, the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it smells, the way it sounds, everything is absolutely on brand. And I think we've proved ourselves enough in terms of having a great team of specialists who are able to kind of collaborate well together to make it happen.
Excellent. I'd love to know what Wallace smells like. I'm imagining it. What aftershave would that be? Brute? I don't know.
It's-
That's related.
Have you done any research on that, Ngaio?
No, I can't say we have actually. There's not a lot of research we've done, but I'm not sure what he smells like. It's something I really want to think about, to be honest.
Brilliant. Well, listen, both, thank you for coming onto the podcast. It's been amazing to talk to you. All three of us are actually going to be at IAP Europe, and Phil, we've got
Exciting
plenty of
times.
pirate things to show.
We've got lots of pirate stuff. Yeah, we've plenty. It's looking forward to show. And obviously, we've been putting out a lot of content recently, but if anyone wants to come and talk to us about our overall process from designing everything from a full kind of theme park all the way through to every aspect that comes into that, talk to us. Come
Yeah,
and
2 for 1. You can have us both at the same time.
yeah.
Come on.